There's a specific kind of silence that falls across a room when you tell your family you just quit a six-figure job to grow kale. My mom's fork didn't even reach her mouth. It just hung mid-air like gravity had taken a lunch break. My dad blinked like I had spoken in Morse code. And then, as if choreographed, they both burst out laughing. Not a chuckle. Not a, "Huh, you're joking, right?" laugh. I'm talking leaning back, wheezing, wiping tears from their eyes kind of laughter. "Wait, you're serious?" Dad said between coughs. "You're gonna become a farmer? Like with chickens?" Mom added, mascara smudging as she laughed so hard she cried. I just stood there, holding my resignation letter like it was a trophy no one wanted. To be fair, I got it. I had spent 8 years climbing the corporate ladder at a national logistics firm. Bland cubicles, polished shoes, passive-aggressive emails, the whole package. I was good at it too. Managed a team. Handled high-end accounts. Even got a standing ovation once at the quarterly meeting for saving a contract no one else could. But none of it felt real. Not like the soil under your nails or the way tomatoes smell when you pluck them still warm from the sun. It didn't happen overnight. I didn't wake up one morning and think, "Beets. That's my destiny." It started with weekend gardening to de-stress. Then it turned into late-night Googling about organic composting. Eventually, I found myself skipping happy hours to plant heirloom carrots and pots on my fire escape. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not the idea of running away, but the idea of running towards something. So yeah, I quit. I cashed out my savings, sold half my furniture, and leased a chunk of overgrown land an hour outside the city. It was rough. Like broken tractor and suspicious raccoon. Kind of rough. But it was mine. Meanwhile, my parents didn't speak to me for a full week. Then came the passive-aggressive texts. "Hope you're enjoying your vacation in the mud. We saw a billboard for Whole Foods, maybe they're hiring. Are you gonna sell worms next?" My sister joined the party too. She sent me a meme of a scarecrow with the caption, "You after quitting your job to chase a vibe." Look, I don't blame them. Not entirely. My family comes from the kind of background where success means keep your tie on and shut up until retirement. If you break from the plan, you're not just taking a risk, you're an embarrassment. But I didn't quit to prove anything to them. I quit because I couldn't go one more day writing emails about freight invoices while my soul felt like a forgotten Excel sheet. The first few weeks on the land were brutal. I woke up sore in muscles I didn't know existed. My hands blistered. I learned, the hard way, that fencing is not something you can YouTube and nail on the first try. Rain made everything slippery. I fell. Twice. Okay, 4 times. But then, one morning, I saw the first green tip of a sprout pushing through the dirt. I knelt there like it was some holy miracle. Because it was. That sprout was the first thing I had grown with my hands. No meetings. No middle managers. No fake smiles or budget reports. Just me, the earth, and that stubborn little seed that said, "I got you." Of course, when I posted a picture of it online, Mom replied, "Is that lettuce? Should we be impressed now?" I didn't answer. Just smiled. Because I knew something she didn't. It wasn't lettuce. It was the start of something that would one day have my former CEO waiting in line, with a checkbook, while my parents sat in traffic wondering why the line at my stand was wrapped around the block. But that came later. For now, I went back to digging. When I told my boss I was leaving to start a farm, he stared at me for a full 10 seconds, then said, "You mean like Farmville?" I didn't laugh. He blinked, realizing I was serious. "You're leaving a stable position. A management track career. For turnips?" "Mostly tomatoes," I replied. "But yeah, turnips too." I cleaned out my cubicle that afternoon while Janice from HR watched like I was walking into a volcano barefoot. Even the intern offered a nervous fist bump, like I had just been diagnosed with something terminal. "You'll be back," my boss muttered as I walked out. "Everyone comes back." Spoiler, I didn't. The first 2 months on the land were survival mode. I lived out of a barely insulated trailer that smelled like old linoleum and stale ambition. There was no Wi-Fi. No hot water. The stove had exactly 2 moods, cold as your ex or hellfire. But I had a notebook. And in that notebook, I wrote everything: planting schedules, weather patterns, soil acidity notes, pest sightings, moments of hope, and quiet breakdowns. I grew radishes that looked like angry marbles and zucchinis that could double as blunt weapons. I learned that organic farming mostly meant your plants die more slowly but with dignity. I ate scrambled eggs for 12 days straight because my chickens refused to coordinate with my calendar. I named them Henny, Yoko, and Beyoncé. Beyoncé was a diva, naturally. Meanwhile, my parents kept texting things like, "Still playing with dirt? The Johnsons' kid just got promoted to VP. You could have been a VP. You were always too stubborn for your own good." What they didn't know was that I had found a rhythm. My mornings began with dew clinging to the grass and the sound of rustling trees. My evenings ended with sunsets so orange it looked like the sky was flirting with fire. I sold my first batch of produce at the local Saturday market. Small table. Wooden crate. Hand-painted sign. Back to Soil Farms. A few curious locals stopped by. One old lady bought all my beets. "They remind me of my husband," she said, then didn't elaborate. I didn't ask. My earnings? $92 and a bag of goat cheese in trade. Was it humiliating after once managing $2? 4M accounts? Nah. It was mine. Every dollar. Every beet. Every stupid crooked carrot. The next week, I made $120. Then $180. Then $300. Slowly, I was finding my people. Foodies. Restaurant owners. Health nuts. Hipster dads in ironic overalls. But my favorite customer? This 10-year-old kid named Eli, who came by with his grandma every Saturday. He'd hold up a pepper like it was a dragon egg and ask, "How do you make this?" And I'd smile and say, "Magic!" And compost. Meanwhile, my parents kept inviting me to real job interviews they found online. "There's an opening at your old firm. Just saying. Why don't you go back before it's too late?" But I was already gone. One weekend, my sister called me out of nowhere. "Are you, okay?" she asked. "Mom says you're having a breakdown in the woods." I looked around at rows of greens swaying in the breeze, fresh tomatoes sunbathing on the vine, and the honeybees buzzing like drunk cousins at a barbecue. "Yeah," I said. "A breakdown never looked this good." She didn't get it. That's fine. Most people didn't. But the thing about growing things from scratch? You learn patience. You learn silence. And you learn that success isn't loud. Sometimes, it just grows quietly, until one day it's big enough that everyone driving by finally sees it. Even my parents. I was balancing a crate of purple bell peppers when my mom's voice popped into my voicemail like a ghost from a life I barely recognized. "We're worried about you. I mean, is this even sustainable? When are you going to stop playing farmer and come back to real life?" Ah, yes. Real life, the one where my soul slowly deflated under fluorescent lights while my inbox regenerated like a hydra. The same life where I celebrated my birthday by eating sheet cake in the break room while Bob from accounting asked if I'd updated the shipping spreadsheet. Yeah, I miss that deeply. The truth? I'd never felt more alive. That summer, my hands were permanently stained from dirt and beet juice. I started waking up without an alarm. I knew which trees the crows liked and how the soil smelled before rain. I built a tiny cold storage shed using reclaimed wood and exactly 12 curse words. My tan was so intense, my old coworkers would have mistaken me for someone who works outdoors on purpose. Which I did. And the farm? It was working. Restaurants were emailing me directly now. One chef drove all the way from the city to buy my peppermint heirloom basil, and left with 3 crates of kale and a jar of fermented hot sauce I hadn't even planned on selling. Word spread. Soon, my Saturdays looked like a pop-up concert. Long lines, reusable tote bags, people filming my tomatoes like they were celebrities. My produce stand had become, dare I say it, a vibe. Meanwhile, my parents still thought I was having a rebellious phase. They didn't visit. Not once. My sister showed up once, in heels, bless her, and immediately screamed when she saw a caterpillar on a cabbage leaf. Ew, EW, EW. You touch this stuff? It's organic, I said. It's alive, she said, backing away like the broccoli had teeth. She stayed 10 minutes, took a selfie with one of my goats, which she filtered into oblivion, then posted. Visiting my weird farm brother today. At least he's happy? Face with tears of joy #countrychaos. Yeah. Real supportive. But I wasn't angry. I was just done performing for people who never clapped anyway. Still, I'll admit it stung, especially on Sundays. Sundays were always family day growing up. Grilled chicken, store-bought salad, dry jokes from Dad. Now Sundays were me, the goats, and the sound of wind brushing through rows of arugula. And even though I had dozens of customers, even though chefs were tagging my produce online, even though Eli drew me a crayon picture that said, "You're the plant king," deep down, a part of me still waited. Waited for a, "Hey, we're proud of you." Waited for them to say, "Maybe you knew what you were doing all along." But that moment never came. Instead, I got another message from Dad. Saw your little booth at the market when we drove by. You had a line. Congrats. Still, hope you come to your senses. Right. Because in their minds I wasn't building something. I was delaying something. Delaying marriage. Delaying a real job. Delaying the moment I finally begged to come back and join the rest of the beige, sensible world. What they didn't realize was, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was planting. And you don't plant if you're planning to leave. Then one Saturday, something wild happened. I was setting up my stand when I saw a guy step out of a black town car. Clean-pressed suit. Shiny shoes. Pocket square. It was Mr. Aldridge. My old CO. The man who once told me during a performance review, "You're good at everything, but you're not memorable." I froze, beat in hand, dirt on my jeans, sweatband across my forehead like some backwoods ninja. This dude? He looked like he hadn't even wrinkled in 5 years. He looked around at the setup. At the crowd. At my chalkboard menu of microgreens and infused vinegars. Then he smiled. But he didn't say a word. Not yet. I wasn't sure what surprised me more, that my old CO showed up at my farm stand, or that he picked up a beat, gave it a slow turn, and said, "This beat looks like it means business." I stared at him. He grinned. "You probably don't remember me," he added, still inspecting the beat like it held secrets. "But I remember you, Mason." Oh, I remembered him. This man once told me my ideas were too out there, during a pitch where I literally saved a $750,000 contract. He gave my coworker Steve the credit. Steve, who once tried to merge 2 PDFs by printing them out and stapling them together. But here he was, standing in front of me, surrounded by crates of rainbow chard and radish bunches, like it was the most natural setting in the world. "Your produce," he said, "came highly recommended by 2 of our exec chefs. I didn't even connect the dots until I saw the name on your sign. Back to Soil Farms." My heart thudded. He extended a hand. "Mason Rowe. You always did like things your own way." I shook his hand, my palm rough, his soft. The contrast felt symbolic. A few people behind him grumbled about the line moving slowly, but he ignored them and looked down at the little laminated flyer I had taped to the corner of my table. CSA sign-ups available. Bulk deliveries. Restaurant partnerships welcome. "Have you thought about scaling?" he asked. "I'm working on it," I replied cautiously. He nodded. "I'm funding a new farm-to-table project. Real chefs, real sourcing. No corporate middlemen. I want it all direct. Transparent. Your name came up in every meeting." My stomach flipped. What was this? He reached into his coat, pulled out a small leather notepad, not even digital, classy as hell, and jotted something. Then came the checkbook. The man actually carried a checkbook. Who does that? He scribbled something, tore it out, and slid it toward me like a magician finishing a trick. "I want first pick of your winter harvest," he said. "This is an investment. Think of it as a vote of confidence." I looked down. $20,000. My mouth went dry. I blinked. Twice. Made sure it didn't say 200,000 or 2,000. Nope. $20,000. With my name spelled correctly. In perfect fountain pen script. Someone behind him muttered, "Is this guy buying the whole farm or what?" I almost laughed. Mr. Aldridge straightened his cufflinks. "We'll be in touch. Don't disappear again, Mason. People are watching now." Then he stepped aside and let the next customer through, a woman in yoga pants holding a poodle and asking if I had gluten-free kale, which isn't a thing, but I just nodded and bagged her some anyway. I tucked the check behind the table, heart pounding, hands shaking like I just won the weirdest lottery imaginable. And right then, I heard it. The familiar hum of a Toyota Camry pulling into the lot. I knew that sound. I turned, and sure enough, my parents. They weren't here to visit. No hug. No. We're proud. They were just driving by, probably on their way to one of those pretentious candle stores my mom loves. But something made them stop. Maybe it was the crowd. The full parking lot. The fact that their son, their disappointment turned dirt goblin, had a line. I watched from behind my crates as the car slowed. My dad squinted through the windshield. My mom's mouth hung slightly open. And then they saw him. Mr. Aldridge. Still within view. Still holding one of my carrots like it was some museum artifact. Mom leaned forward, pointing. Dad mouthed, "Is that?" "Yep. That's your son's old boss. Waiting in line. With a personal check for $20,000 in his coat pocket. For produce. From the kid you called a failure." The Camry sat there for a full minute. No one got out. No one rolled down the window. My mom was still leaning forward in the passenger seat like she thought proximity alone might explain what she was seeing. Dad squinted again, clearly trying to rationalize. Maybe he thought Aldrich was just lost. Maybe he assumed this was all some elaborate prank where a film crew would pop out and yell, "Gotcha! This man doesn't really sell vegetables, he sells spreadsheets." But the line behind Aldrich kept growing. I had two baristas from a downtown cafe chatting about my watermelon radishes. A personal trainer asking if I sold wheatgrass. Some guy in a leather jacket with tattoos was literally negotiating bulk sunflower shoots with a $20 bill already in hand. This wasn't a side hustle. This was a machine. And I was at the center of it. I didn't walk over to the car. Didn't wave. Didn't smile. I just reached for a head of rainbow lettuce, held it up to the light, and misted it, slow, cinematic, like a grocery store scene in a perfume commercial. If Aldridge noticed them staring, he didn't let on. He was already shaking hands with a second chef who had just arrived, this time from a bistro near the waterfront. They both clapped me on the back like I'd just landed a Fortune 500 contract. The Camry blinked its turn signal. And then it pulled away. No horn. No wave. Just silence. For the rest of that market, I worked like nothing had happened. Bagged produce. Handed out recipes. Took orders. Laughed with Eli, who drew a comic strip of me as Super Sprout Guy. But my mind was spinning. They saw it. Finally. Not just the work, but the validation. My father worshipped hierarchy. CEOs were gods. Titles mattered. Prestige meant success. And my former CEO, the man they once bragged about to neighbors when I got hired, just handed me a $20,000 check for kale and character. And yet, part of me still waited for the follow-up. A text. A call. A guilt-drenched voicemail. But nothing came. Just 3 days of silence, until Wednesday night, when my mom finally texted. Mom, 7:12 p.m. Saw you at the market. Look busy. Hope you're taking care of yourself. That's it. No mention of Aldridge. No mention of the check. No. We're proud. Just hope you're eating. I almost replied. Something sarcastic. Maybe. I make 3 varieties of hot sauce now. One's called Mom's Concern. But I didn't. Because I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Their silence said more than any praise ever could. Still, that Thursday, Dad finally cracked. He called, from an unknown number, no less, like I wouldn't pick up if I saw his name. And maybe I wouldn't have. He coughed awkwardly into the phone and said, "You doing okay out there?" "More than okay," I said calmly. "You saw." A pause. "We were surprised." "I know. I mean Aldridge. He was always hard to impress." Another pause. Longer this time. "I guess I didn't realize what you'd built." There it was. Not quite pride. Not quite apology. But something. I didn't fill the silence. I let it hang. Then he asked, "You still have that little trailer out there?" "I built a new place. Solar powered. Rain catch system. Composting toilet." He gave a small chuckle, like he wasn't sure if I was joking. "Then, maybe we could come see it sometime?" I stared out the window of my new cabin, looking at the rows of greens dancing in the wind. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe" was generous. By October, the leaves around the farm had turned every shade of fire. Crimson. Amber. Pumpkin orange. Even the weeds looked poetic. My fall stand was officially thriving. I had hand-labeled jars of pickled okra, sweet pepper jam, squash blossoms in compostable cartons, and a fresh rotation of what I called root boxes, curated bundles for chefs, influencers, and people who say words like mouthfeel. Each Saturday brought new regulars, food bloggers, health nuts, and parents trying to convince their kids that carrots are nature's candy. Eli still came too, now wearing a mini back to soil apron. He called himself assistant manager. Meanwhile, my parents hadn't shown up again since that Aldridge day. That's not to say they didn't try to insert themselves, just in their usual subtle, clumsy way. I got a forwarded article from Mom titled, "The Rise and Fall of Farmers Markets, Is the Trend Over?" Then one from Dad about AI farming, and how manual agriculture might be a dying industry. Subtle shade, like fertilizer mixed with sarcasm. Then came the big ask. One crisp morning, I got a call from my sister. She opened with zero pretext. "So, Mom says you're doing great. And, they were wondering if you'd be open to hosting Thanksgiving this year." I blinked. "You mean, on the farm?" "Yeah, like outside, with the trees and stuff. You've got space, right? Rustic vibes. It'd be cute." I looked outside. My goats were licking the side of a wheelbarrow. Henny had climbed into a laundry basket full of onions. Beyoncé was fighting a crow. "Sure," I said. "Rustic." What I didn't say was, they wanted the aesthetic, not the effort. But fine. I agreed. I set the date. I cleared the space. I even set up a seating area under a big oak tree and ordered compostable plates, because if I was going to be the weird farmer son, I might as well go all in. They arrived late. Naturally. Dad wore loafers. Mom wore white. White. To a working farm. "Look at this place," she muttered. "It's quaint." My dad scanned the field. "So you really still dig holes for a living?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pointed at a basket of delicata squash. "Don't touch that. Those are for an order." They both froze. "For who?" Dad asked. "Restaurant downtown. Same one you took clients to last quarter. Remember the seasonal risotto? That was mine." Mom blinked. "You're in restaurants?" "About 8 now," I said, checking my clipboard. The rest of the family trickled in, cousins, aunts, the usual suspects. Everyone took selfies. Posted captions like, "Farm fresh feels leafy green sparkles. Thankful for family, and artisanal stuffing. Our little countryside dream." No one helped set the table. No one asked how I grew enough greens in a drought season. No one even thanked me, not until dessert. But Eli's grandma hugged me on the way out and whispered, "You built something beautiful. Don't let them make you small again." That almost cracked me. That night, after they left, after the pie plates were stacked and the folding chairs collapsed, I sat on the porch with Beyoncé, the chicken, not the icon, and stared at the stars. I'd fed 30 people that day. From scratch. From soil. And they still treated it like a hobby. But I didn't do this for applause. I did it so I could sleep at night. Wake up happy. Grow things that mattered. And soon, I'd start something even bigger. Because that $20,000 from Aldridge? It wasn't just a fluke. It was the beginning of a partnership. One that would turn this small farm into something they'd never be able to ignore again. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, a sleek black SUV rolled into my gravel lot like it had made a wrong turn on its way to Napa. Out stepped Aldridge, yes, again, and this time, he wasn't in loafers. Nope. He wore boots. Still stiff, probably fresh out of a box, but hey, effort counts. I raised a brow. He nodded solemnly, as if to say, I googled. Farm-appropriate footwear. This time. Respect. He even reached out to pet Beyoncé as she strutted past with a shoelace in her beak like she owned the place. She pecked his cuff, then moved on. Approval granted. We sat on my porch, sipping carrot apple cider from mason jars. Mine had a crack on the handle. His? Etched with. Back to soil. A prototype. Branding, baby. So, he said, swirling his drink like it was aged scotch. You thought about our last conversation? I nodded. Greenhouse expansion. Solar irrigation. Delivery logistics. Partner farms. And I'm working on seed-to-table curriculum for schools. He smiled, the way CEOs do when they realize the quiet kid they dismissed is now steering the ship. That day, we signed paperwork. Real contracts. Real partnership. The check he handed me wasn't for kale this time. It was a business investment. Multi-year. Multi-phase. With my name in the executive summary. I wasn't just supplying produce. I was launching a brand. We called it Soil Forward, a sub-label for urban microfarms. I'd oversee product sourcing, mentorship programs, marketing. We'd start small, regional. Then grow. Later that evening, I texted a photo of the signed contract and greenhouse blueprint to the family group chat. No reaction. Just silence for 2 hours, until my sister replied. So you're like a dirt CEO now? Faced with tears of joy. And Mom? She texted me privately. Mom, 3:42 p.m. Wow. Proud of you. I wish you'd let us be more involved. Ah, yes. Now they want it in. The people who once forwarded job listings with subject lines like, in case the cabbage doesn't pay off. The same parents who laughed when I sold my first carrot for $2 like it was a toddler's lemonade stand. Involved. Now meant what exactly? Praising me on Facebook? Asking for holiday gift baskets with family discount. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to work. That weekend, we sold out before 10:30 a.m. It wasn't even a holiday rush, just word of mouth. Local chefs. Wellness bloggers. One lady drove 2 hours just for my beet hummus because her nutritionist refused to eat anything else. I was packing up early when my phone buzzed. Dad. Calling. Not texting. Calling. I nearly dropped a crate of daikon. Hey, he said. We're at the market. I blinked. Which one? Ours, he said like it was obvious. I stepped out from the back of the stand and spotted them. Mom in a too-white sweater for farm territory, Dad standing stiffly next to an empty produce crate, scanning my chalkboard menu like it personally offended him. There's a sign that says sold out, he said. Already? We opened at 8, I said. Didn't expect a line before sunrise, but here we are. Another pause. You'd really turn away your own parents? I raised a brow. You were never really customers. Mom stepped in, voice light. Come on. You know we just didn't understand at first. I nodded. Exactly. You didn't understand. And that didn't stop you from mocking it anyway. Dad shifted. So what now? You just build this empire and shut us out. I glanced around, at my greenhouse skeleton, the stacked crates prepped for delivery, the clipboards hanging from color-coded hooks. My staff, loading boxes into a branded van that read back to soil. Empire's dramatic, I said. But yeah, I built something. Without you. Mom tried again. So, are we partners now? I didn't laugh. I didn't explode. I just answered calmly. No. But you're welcome to visit. As guests. Dad scoffed. Guests? Exactly, I said. No discounts. No input. No rewriting history. Guests. Then I turned and walked away. They stood there, blinking in front of a sold-out sign while strangers complimented the farm, posed for photos, and carried off produce they once called a hobby. But now it was a business. And it had outgrown their approval. Spring came fast that year. The greenhouse was humming, the co-op was live, and the new branded crates. Gorgeous. We had QR codes, glossy labels, and bios of the farmers behind each item. Customers loved it. Investors took notice. One even called me the Tesla of turnips. Weird, but I'll take it. Aldrich sent me a photo of one of our kale bundles plated at a luxury spa retreat. My logo was stamped on the side of the bowl. He captioned it. They asked if you catered weddings. Should I say yes? I laughed. Because 2 years ago, I was praying someone would buy 2 heads of cabbage. Now, I had 3 interns, a team of 6, and a delivery van with my name on the side. I wasn't running a stand. I was running a system. Then came the final twist. One Saturday, I was behind the counter restocking sweet onions when a familiar voice drifted over the crowd. I think that's him. He's the one with the peaches everyone's talking about. I looked up. My former department manager. The guy who once told me to stop bringing weird salads to lunch because it made the others feel bad. The same one who said I'd burn out in 6 months playing Little House on the Prairie. Now, he stood there in cargo shorts, holding a reusable tote bag and sweating under the May sun like a man who needed that salad. His wife pointed at my Jared tomato pesto. He reached the front of the line, looked at me, then did a double take. Mason? I smiled. Hey, Greg. He blinked. This is your stand? Technically, my flagship location. We've got 3 now. He tried to play it cool, glancing around. Wow. You really stuck with this? I did. Then, he did it. Pulled out his wallet. And said the words I never thought I'd hear. What do I need to pay for the full crate of whatever you've got? My kid's allergic to preservatives now. Doctor said farm fresh or nothing. I reached under the counter, pulled out a pre-packed box, and handed it to him. $1.20. He didn't flinch. He peeled off 6 $20 bills, handed them over like he was paying penance. And as he walked away, I couldn't help myself. Greg? He turned. I smiled. Calm. Polite. Funny who ends up in line. He didn't respond. Just nodded and walked off. That evening, I sat by the field as golden hour hit the crops. The sun hit just right, and my shadow stretched long, strong, full. My phone buzzed again. A missed call from my dad. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted back 2 words. I'm harvesting. Because now, when they called, it wasn't for advice. Or support. Or encouragement. It was because they realized something. I didn't fail. I planted. And everything they laughed at? It grew.